Welcome to Marin Voices and Views. With Lawrence A. Strick, I'm Peter B. Collins, and Happy New Year to you. This is our first show of the new year, and we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about with two great people. Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan will join us in our first segment to talk about the budget and what's going to happen with it in Sacramento. And Damon Connolly of the San Rafael City Council will be here in our second segment to talk about a number of local issues. Larry?
Joan Buchanan is a Democrat who represents the 15th Assembly District in the East Bay. Prior to that, she worked at Delta Dental, I could say that, as a manager, left there, raised her 5 children, served for 20 years on the San Ramon Valley School Board, including 4 terms as president, and then was elected to the Assembly in 2008. She was recently re-elected, and there she serves on both the Budget Committee and the chair of the Subcommittee on Information and Technology and Transportation. Welcome.
Thank you.
Joan, we're about to say goodbye to Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's gone. And now that the smoke and the mirrors have cleared and we could go on with our business, is this going to be a year of reckoning for California? What's going on?
Oh, it's going to be a huge year of reckoning. And, you know, if you think about our budget, we didn't get into this situation overnight. It's been something that's been accumulating for a long time. Back when Gray Davis was governor, if you recall, he wanted to increase the vehicle license fee because we faced a deficit, and we didn't do that. We borrowed. In 2004, Schwarzenegger's first year, he asked the people to pass a $15 billion revenue bond and said, I'm going to pay off the debt, balance the budget, and tear up the credit card. He never did that. We've been borrowing to balance the budget year after year after year, and the cumulative effect of that is huge. It's you know, we're to the point now where the legislative analyst estimates that we're going to have a $25 billion shortfall in next year's budget, which could grow to $28 billion if the federal government repeals the estate tax, and that's on real revenues of about $80 billion. So it's a significant problem.
The action movie star turned governor, Governator, is busy writing his own reviews and trying to create a legacy. What's your honest appraisal of Arnold Schwarzenegger's tenure as governor?
Well, his legacy is not going to be in one of fiscal accountability. We have actually passed over $80 billion worth of bonds under this governor. We have incurred more debt than under any governor in the history of California. In fact, if you take a look at the vehicle license fee, which had a trigger to go up back in 2003 when Davis was governor, and that is the equivalent of $6 billion a year in revenue, and you take a look at the debt service for the bonds we've incurred, which is $5.8 billion a year for 30 years, that's almost $12 billion a year. Mm-hmm. So, you know, even given the severe recession that we're experiencing, many of the decisions that this governor has made has led to the severe fiscal problems we're experiencing right now.
Yeah.
So we have a new governor, we have a new legislature. How is Jerry Brown going to be different? What are options for him?
Well, I always like to tell people you can't do what you don't understand. And the one thing that's abundantly clear to me is that Jerry Brown understands the problem. He understands how we got into the problem, he understands the magnitude of the problem, and he understands that we just can't hand a bill to future generations, that we have an obligation to deal with it.
You invested 20 years of your life before you came to Sacramento in supporting and enhancing local public schools in your own area, the San Ramon Valley. How tough is it for you to see the way we've borrowed more than $6 billion from the school, even as we have cut funding under the Prop 98 formula? And Governor Brown is warning that due to the looming shortfall we have, that more cuts to education are in order. And California's schools have declined sharply in the last 15 years. This is a very toxic combination of underinvesting in our future.
We're not only underinvesting in our children's future and shortchanging them, we're underinvesting in the future of California. If you think of my parents' generation and the investments they made in public education, you know, California was rated 5th in the nation when I was a child going to school here. And the return on those investments were immense. California was the home of technology, of aerospace, of biotechnology, of the internet. We have, all kinds of industries and economic development that is directly a result of those investments in education. California remains the innovation hub of the world. The question is, are we going to have the workers and the leaders to create those kinds of industries in the future? And I would say that's in doubt. Mm-hmm. If you take a look at the University of California, Berkeley, right across the bay from here, they get roughly 25% of their income from the state of California. UCSF, one of the best medical centers in the nation, gets just under 5% of its income from the state. Are these public schools or are they private schools? And more kids can't get into them even with 4.5 grade point averages. So I don't know how we're going to meet the educational demands of future generations with the way we're funding education. Right now, California ranks 43rd in the nation in funding in K-12 education. We rank 49th in students per teacher, some of the largest class sizes in the nation, 49th in counselors per teacher, 50th in librarians per teacher, 47th in administrators not per teacher, per student. And that on top of the fact that we've cut $7 billion out of K-12 education in the last 2 years. So I think where we fund education right now is abysmal. And if we don't change that, if we don't return to the values of my parents' generation, I think California is going to have a very tough future.
One of the things that you hear a lot is that California is top-heavy with people who are working here in the state, and there's the state employees are earning too much money, and it's really out of band compared to the rest of the country. Is that accurate?
Well, California, if you take a look at how we compare, California ranks 15th in the total burden of taxes and fees. So we're not in the top 10, but we are above the average, and of course we have a high cost of living here, so you would expect that. But when you get into the number of state employees, we rank 47th in the nation in the number of employees per capita. If you add in all of your local government employees, we rank 45th in the nation, 6th from the bottom. So if you want to compare us to other states, we're near the bottom in terms of the number of employees we have per capita.
And Joan Buchanan, isn't it true that if we were to lay off every state employee, including the prison guards, the highway patrol, every state employee, that we're only talking about $5 or $6 billion a year out of what's currently an $84 billion budget?
Well, not quite. We're talking about a little bit more, but certainly not enough to balance the budget. Prison expenditures right now are about $9 billion a year. So if we open up our doors and released everyone from prison, we'd save $9 billion. It's a lot of money, but it's not the $25 billion. We could actually close every university, every state college, every community college, and not come close to making up the $25 billion. That's about $5 billion in expenditures. So when you take a look at how big this problem is, it's significant. You can't close it in a thoughtful way by just making all the cuts in any one area. In fact, in a way, the public's a little bit schizophrenic, because if you take a look at recent polling that's been done, they say, we don't want to increase revenue. We want you to balance the budget by making cuts. It's okay to cut prisons, but don't cut health and don't cut schools. Well, when you take a look at the pie and where we spend our money, it just doesn't add up.
So now we passed Proposition 25. And we might be able to expect that the budget's going to be passed with Democratic votes. You guys are going to own the budget. Is there going to be a political fallout, and all the responsibility for what's going on in California is going to lay at your door because of Prop 25 and your responsibilities with the budget?
Well, I think certainly the responsibility it lays at our door because the Democrats are the majority party. But I don't think we have any choice but to make the tough decisions, and it's clear to me that as I said before, Governor Brown understands this, and he's going to be honest and lay out the problem, the magnitude of the problem with the people, and let people know that these are the programs we're going to cut unless we're willing to increase revenues. And he said, I'm going to go to the people and ask them to vote on new taxes. So no new taxes without voter approval, I believe, was his.
So the process, starting in January, the governor will introduce a budget. He hopes to have a budget passed with only 51 votes needed in a Democratic-controlled legislature by March or so.
Yeah, my understanding is.
And this would be a bare bones budget based on the current available revenues. And then the idea is that we would go to voters with a kind of Chinese menu and say, you know, will you support an increase in the income tax if it's earmarked for schools? Is it going to be that kind of approach? And how will he persuade California voters to raise their own taxes when the movie star tried twice and failed?
Well, first of all, I can't speak for the governor, but what is clear to me is that he is going to give the people a budget that's an honest budget, that doesn't balance it with gimmicks, and that lets them know the tough choices that we have to make. So he will lay on the table exactly what programs or services are going to have to be cut in order to bring this budget into balance. Then, in terms of going to the voters for additional revenue, I think he's going to have to make that decision along with both the Republican and the Democratic leaders in the legislature. And ultimately, it's the people of California to decide what kind of state do we want, what kind of education system, you know, what services do we believe are critically important to the people in the state.
But isn't there a big risk that we'll have a bare bones budget, we'll ask voters to approve tax increases, they won't do it, and then we're screwed? What do we do?
We're screwed right now. We've got a $25 billion deficit with roughly $80 billion in real income. If you think about our budget, you know, in February 2009, we passed temporary revenues that are now all expiring. The federal government has been giving us stimulus dollars for certain programs. All the programs charged with stimulus dollars, we can't do that anymore because we're not getting new stimulus dollars. We tried budgeting gimmicks like taking the payroll instead of paying it on June 30th, paying it on July 1. There aren't any gimmicks or borrowing that we can do. So we have to face this head on. And I believe it's time that we're honest with the people. We can't, if not, we're going to kill this state by 1,000 cuts. And we have to deal with the budget process itself, and we've got to deal with the long-term stressors on the budget. Our prisons have grown from 2 to 3% of the budget to 9 or 10%. That's $2 to $3 billion to $9 or $10 billion a year that we're spending on prisons that we cut out of education, that we cut out of public safety, putting more cops on the street. You know, we can't continue to afford to do that. It's much cheaper to educate. Of the prisoners, 90% haven't graduated from high school, 60% can't read. So where do we want to spend our money? Our debt service was 2% of the budget in the 80s, 4% in the 90s. It's 6.75%. And because of the bonds we've passed under Schwarzenegger, we'll grow to over 10% if we don't pass another bond. And pensions, that debt obligation continues to grow. So I'm happy that we have a governor who understands the problems and is willing to deal with it and willing to be honest with the people.
Well, thank you for your honest assessment and straight talk. It's going to be a very interesting year, and I hope you get plenty of sleep and you're up for the challenges.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you today.
Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan, Democrat from the East Bay, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joan.
Thanks.
Damon Connolly is the first guest to make a second appearance on Marin Voices and Views. Nice going.
It's an honor.
Damon is in his first term on the San Rafael City Council. Before that, he served on the Dixie School District Board for 4 years. He is an attorney with a business law practice in San Rafael, and before that was a Deputy Attorney General for the state of California. Welcome back, Damon.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Now, the proposed Target store in East San Rafael has been one of the most contentious issues before the council in this past year. And when our viewers see this show in January, you will have made up your mind, and hopefully this issue will be resolved. Tell us about the process of making this decision, and can you give us any prediction or any inkling about which way it might go?
Well, let's start with the process. First of all, I want to commend the community on both sides of the issue for having their voices heard. To date, this process has been going on for several years now. It started with our design review board, then our planning commission. The city council has already had about 6 hours of hearings on the matter, and we actually have another set of hearings on December 20th, where I expect several more hours of community input, hearing from the applicant Target. Outside of our proceedings themselves, we are getting hundreds of emails, phone calls, letters, and analyses. I've got to say, it really makes it easy as a decision maker to process all the issues. Of course, the decision itself may not necessarily be easy. It is controversial.
You know, I would imagine with a contentious issue like Target coming into the community, there's going to be all kinds of special interests on this, individual people, but also maybe some of the unions, some of the other businesses in town. Do these people actually make their voice known to you, and how do they get to you guys?
We're hearing a whole range of voices. I mean, one thing about the local level of government is they know where to find us. I mean, my phone number's in the phone book. Our emails are publicized. We have a city website that people can weigh in on. We are hearing from every conceivable group, Larry, and again, that's been a good part of the process. There are some legitimate areas of concern here. What kind of tax revenues are in fact going to be created, and what is the net impact on our local economy? What kind of jobs, wages, health benefits, are they the kind of jobs that will ultimately be beneficial to our community? Let me go back to a broader point, Peter, that you raised, what kind of posture this is in. The fact is we actually are being called on to amend our general plan and also actually do an override of the California Environmental Quality Act, because there are certain factors here, namely traffic, that are deemed to be unmitigable. So we actually have to override that by finding sufficient community benefit. So in my view, that's really where the analysis comes in. The benefits.
So then, pardon me, but quality of life issues are a factor
Absolutely.
in this review because of the requirement to amend the general plan.
That's right. So really what we're being called on to decide as a body is there sufficient benefit to our community to allow this project to go forward? And the key issues are going to be employment issues, tax revenue issues, impact on the local economy, and environmental issues, which more broadly speaking includes traffic, carbon emissions, wetlands, et cetera. So a lot of various issues are being considered and vetted right now.
Damon, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Well, go ahead.
Oh, you got a follow-up? Go ahead, because I was going to...
I was going to leave the area, but if there's a follow-up, let's go. I was gone.
Larry,
I'm off target.
Larry, going back to you, though, you can tell from all the range of issues, needless to say, there are folks and groups with an opinion on each of the above.
I'm sure
right?
there are.
So.
Go ahead.
You voted in favor of those red light cameras and on a trial basis, the one over on Irwin Street. And the cameras have been there for a while. They've brought in about $2 million in fines from more than 3,000 alleged violators here in San Rafael. There's been a series of articles around in various news organizations, local ones, that this money's not necessarily only coming to the city of San Rafael, but it's being dispersed. It's being dispersed in Arizona, back to the state of California, all over the place. Has this thing worked, or are we going to pull the plug on these cameras like 26 other cities have in California?
Well, basically, I'm aware of the concerns, and my understanding of the program is it is not a way of generating revenue. That was one of the criteria we asked about. I'm also mindful of the civil liberties issues at stake. What I'd like to do is, I think the program is coming up for a review in San Rafael, and it might be time to ask the tough questions. You know, is it working as planned? The experiences in other jurisdictions could be educational or instructive for us. I know there are jurisdictions that are pulling out of similar programs right now. I'd like to learn more about that. On some level, it does seem to be working in that there are, from my limited understanding at this point, without getting into more study when it comes up before us, it has had some impact on red light running.
So there's been a safety benefit to this?
Correct. I mean, and that's the ultimate goal. But again, we're going to be weighing all the factors. At one time, there was even some consideration about should the program be expanded. Well, a lot of questions would have to be answered before that happened.
Damon, you chaired a local transit committee, and we want to get your views on the smart train plan.
Sure.
Excuse me. There's not enough money to build it all the way from Cloverdale to Larkspur. Is this consistent with what voters approved?
Well, let me tell you this. I was very happy to see the headline today that they've reconsidered their earlier decision to stop it at the Civic Center and are now going to downtown San Rafael. I think it was going to be very hard to continue to sell the project to the public without at least going to downtown San Rafael. The whole idea of SMART, and I am a supporter, I voted for the project, is part of a multimodal set of solutions for the North Bay. So it has to link up with buses and other modes of
You're
transit.
talking to the transit center over
Yeah,
over
yeah,
downtown.
exactly, in downtown San Rafael. You can, that is more of a natural terminus as well. Now, I think you're right, Peter. I think ultimately one of the selling points was it would go to the ferry or near the ferry and have that further linkage. I'm willing to continue to support it with this change that they will be going to downtown San Rafael. I think they still need to develop plans to get it near the ferry to make it that much better still.
Mm-hmm.
What's San Rafael's budget look like for next year? And are you getting less money from Sacramento? And is the money that you're not going to be getting from Sacramento going to cause reductions in San Rafael services?
We're in pretty good shape right now, Larry. I don't have to tell you guys, the last couple years have been brutal. Just to put it in perspective, in 2007, I think we had about 445 employees in the city. We now have about 390. We were cutting into the bone the last couple budgets, including public safety officers, other critical employees. So a lot of pain. My sense is because of the work we did, and it was, as difficult as it was, it ended up being a good process because the way we approached it is we had a series of community meetings. They were well attended. We heard from the different groups and made the decisions, reprioritized where we could even. I think we're looking fairly good going into this year. So that would be my cautious optimism at this point.
Well, that's encouraging,
Yes.
particularly after what Assemblywoman Joan Buchanan told us about the problems in Sacramento.
Yeah, which are well known. And obviously we always have to keep our eye on those issues. My sense is there could be a huge impact on schools. Cities may not be quite as bad off in the state picture.
Yeah. Damon, you're vice chair of the Marin Energy Authority, and this is the...
Actually, I'm a member of the board and
Okay.
chair of the technical committee. Sean Marshall is
Okay.
vice chair.
I'm
who
sorry,
you guys may know. No problem.
I gave you a promotion there that wasn't authorized.
Give him a raise.
There you go.
I'm a longtime supporter of this concept. You were subjected to an incredible campaign of attacks from PG&E. You survived that. The first phase is now complete. Tell us what the projections are for MEA coming into 2011.
We're excited about where we're going. As you mentioned, to some extent, there's nothing like a little bit of success to move the project forward. I'll let you know that at our last meeting, we just enacted 2 new programs that I think are going to be real selling points going forward. One is called the feed-in tariff.
Needs a new name, but it's a great concept.
Absolutely.
Basically, I can generate excess power
Yes.
and sell it to the grid,
Yes.
the Marin grid.
Exactly, under contract and get paid for it. We also are going to be issuing a request for proposal early next year specifically toward small renewable projects located in Marin and regionally. Again, the whole vision of MEA was to let's get it started by going under contract with a wholesale supplier who can meet our needs for the light green and deep green products. But ultimately, we want to bring local renewable resources within the program. And these are concrete first steps to do that. So very excited about that.
I'm a little confused as to the status of Marin Energy.
Sure.
It's not yet available for residential users, or it is?
Yes, it is. So
It
phase
is.
one, Larry, great question. Phase one is a portion of residential users tending toward those using more electricity. Okay, so there also are all the municipalities who are participating themselves who chose to stay in are in phase one, which were the vast majority, and then some commercial. The other folks who can participate in phase one are people who want to opt in at the deep green level. In other words, even if on the natural, maybe you're a lower level user of electricity, you would be phased in as later on. You can now do it if you want to go with the 100% options. A ton of people are doing that.
So a guy who owns a house in Mill Valley could opt in if they want to go deep green?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'd recommend it.
Well, Damon, we're out of time, but thank you for joining us for a wide-ranging discussion of local issues. Great to see you.
My pleasure. Thanks again, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.